Right, and welcome to Blackphoenix Entertainment. Yep, I'm doing it already. We're gonna compare the Can Am Ryker Sport and the Can Am Ryker RS. Both sporty bikes. So we're gonna see the differences. We're gonna talk about the specs before I hop on both bikes and do a little bit more comparison while riding. Now, if you're new here, I appreciate it. And if you're one of my fellow flock members, I appreciate you guys coming back. And for you news people, why don't you go down there already, beginning of the video, give me a good old like, give me a subscribe and all that fun stuff, all the fun YouTube stuff, and that way I can become one of the larger three-wheel channels on YouTube. Well, we're done with that. Let's talk about the specs between both machines before I hop on them. So let's talk about the Spyder RS first. It has the Rotex 998 motor, which I've talked about a lot on this channel. It's the same as the Aprilia motor. It's V-twin, and stock comes with 100 horsepower and 80 pounds of torque. Those of you that follow my channel know that BPE Spyder is not stock at all, so those numbers are definitely gone up above stock. The other thing that's interesting is it's got a 5-speed semi-automatic transmission. It's belt driven and fuel tank capacity of 6.6 gallons, which puts it, for me, anywhere between 120 and 150 miles on a tank of gas. Your mileage may vary on that. Let's talk about the Riker real quick for those specs. It is a Rotex Inline 3 900, puts out 80 horsepower and around 60 pounds of torque with a 5.3 gallon gas tank. And the interesting note here is it's a CVT and it's shaft driven to the rear wheel. So it's a slightly different setup there with the transmissions, and I don't want to say bigger motor, but it's a different configuration type motor, whereas you got the V-twin in the Spyder and you've got the inline 3 in the Riker. The other interesting note is weight. Now the Spyder RS is the least weighing Spyders out of the whole lineup, and I looked it up. I thought it weighed 750 pounds. The Spyder RS actually comes in dry at 798 pounds dry, so it actually weighs more than I thought it did. Now the Riker dry weighs 642 pounds. That's a pretty significant difference, and with the power levels, you actually see that a lot more in a Riker, which I'll talk about more once I hop on the bike. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hop on each of the bikes, I'm gonna talk about them individually, and do some comparisons as I'm riding, and at the very end, I'm gonna do a fun little experiment that you guys wanna definitely want to stay for. I'm gonna go down my special little strip of Mexico. We're gonna do a 0 to top speed, and that is interesting because I've already noticed a significant difference in a full pull between the Spyder RS and the Riker, and I'm gonna talk about it afterwards. So let's hop on the bikes.
All right, so here we are. We are on the 2013 Spyder RS. Now, there's a few things that I want to talk about specifically about this RS. Number one, if you're a member of the flock and you're a subscriber, you know about this thing. You know how much work has been done to this thing. It is not a stock Spyder. If you're a new viewer or a new subscriber, let me just put it this way. There's been a lot of work done to this thing. Full suspension, swaybar, tune, exhaust, intake. It is not your average everyday Spyder, so it is going to ride a lot different than a Spyder you would just buy off the shelf, as we say. So I'm going to talk about a few different things before I get to my test run in Mexico. Spyders in general tend to have more storage than Rikers, and that is the case with the RS, although it's funny because the RS actually has less storage out of all of the Spyders. Go figure. But that is something that I actually really like about this Spyder. It's still sporty and it's quick, but I've got the storage for average day trips and commuting when I need it. It's got the front trunk area that I can fit my full backpack and some of my motovlogging stuff and stuff like that in it. And what's really cool is I've got this little pouch up here that I put in that I can just store simple stuff that I need right away, and that definitely helps. One thing while we're stopped, just the general footprint of the Spyders. I had mentioned they weigh about, let's call it 800 pounds. It was like 798 pounds dry, so wet with a driver, some storage, you're definitely probably over 820 pounds. But just in general, it is bigger, puts a little bit bigger footprint on the road, so you've definitely seen more, and you feel that weight. And it's interesting, I've talked about it in other videos, depending on Like if you're a Spyder rider and you go from an RT to another Spyder, you'll feel that weight. If you went from a fully loaded Spyder Sea to Sky and then you go to this Spyder, you'll be like, holy crap. Like, it just in general, the handling and some acceleration and braking, you'll definitely feel, you know, you'll feel the weight, and you feel it in turns a lot. Now, that's a stock Spyder. This has been upgraded. I've got fully customizable M2 suspension on this, the sway bar, stuff like that. Handles a lot better, but now that I've been on the Riker, I still feel the weight of this Spyder. Not a bad thing, but it's something to be conscious of, and if you're going back and forth, it's something you've got to be like, all right, I cannot ride this the same way that I just rode my Riker. And that's also another good point. I want to talk about braking in the Spyder. These Spyders have Brembo brakes. They're absolutely amazing. ABS traction control. It will stop when you need it to stop, and I've mentioned that in a lot of my videos. When all else fails and you're not sure what to do, slam on the brakes and this thing's going to stop for you. The other obvious thing is shifting. It's still a semi-automatic. I still got to shift it, got to upshift. Don't have to downshift if I don't want to, but I tend to do that just because the computer doesn't know when you actually need to downshift. But when you come into a stop, it's actually pretty convenient. I can just concentrate on braking and stuff like that. They do come in manuals. You know, you get a clutch, you get the foot shifter, you get all that stuff. So that is something that if you're looking for a sporty Spyder RS and you still want a manual transmission, you can still get it. You just got to do a little bit of looking. They are out there. So another interesting fact, comparison about the Spyders here, hitting those twisty turns. Spyders have power assist. They not total power steering, but power assist. So corners like that, a little bit easier to do than in the Rikers. And I'll explain that a little bit more once I hop on the Riker. And after riding the Riker, I realized, again, I go back to the footprint. Slightly bigger footprint, you feel the weight, you feel, what's the word? You're definitely not caged, but there's a little bit more around you. You feel a little bit more stable, possibly a little bit more secure with the higher weight and the more mass of the Spyders. So, with that being said, without further ado, with the help of television magic, let's go to Mexico. Alright, so here we are on the 2022 Can Am Ryker Sport, and as you can see, yeah, it is a totally different view, totally different machine, and I'm going to go over it, but yeah, just looking around, there's not that much to these things, and that's one of the most significant differences, going from a Spyder to a Riker. You got to understand that yes, you're getting less, but it's a totally different machine. So with that, yes, the weight difference. Like I said, Spyder RS, let's call it 800 pounds. This Riker, let's call it 650. I'll just round up, call it even. So yeah, a little bit less to it. There's kind of, again, I'm going to talk about it like I did with the Spyder, a little less secure. There's a little less stability, there's a little less around you, so that might make some people feel uncomfortable. For me, I don't mind either way. Like I said, I like the Spyder RS, I like this. It's one of those things you just got to get used to. And in talking about weight, we'll talk about power and power to weight ratio. Yes, on paper, and I've said this before in my test ride Riker video, on paper you look at the Riker stats and you're like, oh, it makes less power than the Spyder. You know, it can't be all that much, you know, more fun. It is. Look at the weight of this. It's only 650 pounds. Makes 80 horsepower and 60 pounds of torque stock. So you've got the Spyder that makes 100 horsepower and 80 pounds of torque with potentially, if I'm doing my mathematician stuff right, 150 pounds more. So, yeah, just, you know, I'm sure someone could do some advanced math there and do the exact power to weight ratio and just run the numbers and see which one is faster that way. But it's much easier to go to Mexico and figure that out. One of the things that I immediately noticed on the Riker is the braking. It does not have the advanced braking systems that the Spyder does. It's not Brembo, it's not anything like that. For the stock brakes, they're not squishy, just underpowered. As far as, like, if you want to slam on the brakes, you feel like you've really got to hit that pedal to get this thing to stop. And I don't know, is that good, is that bad? It's just probably the nature of what it is, especially because it is a Riker, and, you know, it's not going to have all those advanced creature comfort features or advanced performance features that the Spyders will have, and that's something you got to know going into it. But luckily, that is something that you can change in the aftermarket. Get some new rotors, get you know, maybe change out the brake fluid, put some new pads in there, and you're probably good to go. And probably one of the most interesting things about the Riker is the drivetrain, and that seems to turn some people off. Really, some of your old school motorcycle guys that really want your V-twins and all your big motors and standard transmissions. Yeah, this is, I don't know if we call the Riker a bike. It's a motorcycle in the category, but it's really kind of in a class of its own if you just look at the drivetrain. It's very interesting. It is the inline 3 Rotax 900 motor, made it to a CVT transmission with shaft drive. It is very interesting, and I'll have to say, it puts that power to good use. The CVT is instant RPMs, instant torque, and it's fun. So yeah, it takes a little getting used to. I've already caught myself trying to shift this on certain occasions. You know, it's randomly going and you hear the RPMs, you hear the motor, you're like, oh, I should shift, but you don't have to. So that's not a pro, it's not a con, it's just, again, the nature of the beast, which I've probably repeated a bunch of times and will probably continue to repeat. It is the nature of the Riker. We're hitting these turns again, taking the same route. You know, you guys probably know what I'm going to talk about after this. So took that first turn slightly faster than I probably should have, but yes, I talked about it. Spyders have power assist. Rikers have none. No power assist, no power steering, no nothing. It is all you and all your muscles steering this thing, and quite honestly, it's not that bad. It really isn't. If you're pushing it, like if I took that corner any faster than I did, I definitely would have had to put some more strain into it and maybe kind of lean my body a little bit to really get this thing to turn the way I wanted it to. But regular driving, regular riding, highway stuff, you know, parking lots, turns like that, you're probably not even really going to notice it. You're only, in my opinion, and in my experience, I only notice it when I'm really pushing the Riker, trying to make those turns. Whereas on the Spyder, I'd be like, all right, I know I can take this turn at this speed, and it's going to turn for me. All right, so another thing I want to talk about is storage on the Rikers. You actually get less than you do on the Spyder RSs, which isn't saying much, but you've got this little thing right up here. You can toss a few small things into it. Definitely not a backpack. You're talking like wallets, keys, phones, you know, really small stuff, bottles, a couple bottles of water maybe, things like that. Just like stuff that you would take on like a really, you know, small trip, something like that. Nothing, probably not a day trip. I don't know. I mean, I guess that depends on kind of how you ride and what you really bring with you. But yeah, definitely lacking in storage. But again, it's not 100% what these things are for. They're for, you know, just like kind of commuting and just, you know, like a little toy. You go around and tool around the back roads and go home. But Again, with the aftermarket, you can get saddlebags, storage, and stuff like that. So if that's really what you want to use it for, which I will be adding some storage to it at some point, it's not a bad deal. All right, with all that being said, I'm ready to take this thing to Mexico and compare it to the RS. So with the magic of editing and live television, I will meet you there.
Alright, Flock, back in the studio. Going over the footage. It is really, really interesting going over the footage of those pulls that I did. Watching them by themselves, individually, but then watching them together in sync, you notice something. So I did the best I could. I got a dual view of both runs. We're going to play that, and then I'll come back and we're going to talk about it. So that is super, super interesting to me, because riding each bike individually feels fast in its own right, and I personally really thought the Spyder was faster. Now, as far as the top speed goes, that is what it is. The Riker is stock, and I don't have any. I have a power commander on a Spyder. I have no ECU tuning on it, so Can Am has put some tuning in there to limit top speed and all that stuff. It is what it is. They're all going to top out around 103, 105. It's how fast they get there is, you know, the difference there. And I really thought the Spyder was quicker for what it is. I think this is where the power to weight comes in. The Spyder weighs so much more, and even though I've got some work done to it, and, you know, it is quicker than stock, the Riker, man, you don't have to shift it. It weighs a lot less, and it just goes. That's it. You just pin the throttle, and that's it, and you get to your top speed. So I found that really, really interesting. So there's nothing between them. So with this comparison, really, I like both bikes. I love the Spyder. I love the Riker. So in my opinion, there's nothing between them. I would ride both all day long. That's really what it is. Now, as far as you, the viewer, members of the flock, if you can have two, cool. You can have two. You can have more than one bike. If you had to pick one, I'd say, hey, hop on it. Give it a test ride, see which one you're more comfortable with, and that's the one you should pick. So, all that being said, I appreciate everybody sticking around for this video and me putting out some Riker content. Definitely appreciate all you new viewers, new subscribers, new flock members, and everyone else sticking around for my Riker content. Why don't you go down there, do all the fun YouTube stuff, do the liking, subscribing, sharing, share it out, make me one of the larger three-wheel channels on this YouTube platform, and leave me a comment, let me know that I'm doing a good job, let me know I'm doing a bad job. Doesn't matter. I'll take it either way. And while you're down there, I still got some cool stuff in my description. I got some discount codes for Lunified and my Blackphoenix merchandise. You guys can save some money on some cool stuff. So, it's a win-win for everybody. So, with all that being said, thank you for rocking with the flock, and see you guys on the next one.